these acts could save some marriages. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know, and maybe I'm wrong.
And again, even if these acts are less than perfect relative to the conjugal act,
and we're not debating that,
right? But again, compared to what? What's the alternative? It's acts like the. Welcome back, everyone. Craig and Jonah here today. If you're watching video, you'll see the little thing scrolling across the bottom.
Do not take theological advice from us.
Definitely do not take theological advice from us, especially on this episode.
We just talk about our experiences. Mm-hmm. That's all that we can do.
Yeah. So anyway, so a Twitter mutual sent me this article that I want to show and talk about a little bit. So I'm going to see if I can put up on the stage without screwing it up. And I'm going to put full screen so you don't have to look at me. Okay. So this is an article from the National Catholic Register. Christian Brugger. I bet he got called Booger a lot as a kid. July 19th. Yeah. So here's the question. We are a Catholic couple married for more than 10 years, practicing natural family planning for health reasons without using contraception. My husband's frustration with our abstinence periods, wow, I guess we're not the only ones.
No.
Has led to marital tension. I don't know what that's all about.
Yeah, I've lived through that.
Yeah. And his occasional use of porn. And he has grown resentful of the, quote, Catholic rules, unquote, about sexual pleasure and marital intercourse. I can relate to that, along with 99% of Catholic men.
It sounds like he might want to come on our podcast.
Yeah, he'd be a good fit, preferably her. But so this is the wife writing in here.
Yeah.
Though he still agrees with avoiding contraception, he believes mutual manual stimulation during abstinence is legitimate if the purpose of the acts is to foster intimacy between us and make the whole home and family more harmonious. This guy must listen to our channel.
I know exactly how he feels if he doesn't.
I struggle to find clear guidance in the Catechism on this issue. Yeah, go check out episode 200 and feel compelled to comply to preserve our marriage and reduce his temptation despite concerns about its morality. Anonymous Catholic woman.
I wonder if they do listen to our show. It's just interesting because that is
this is right in that sweet spot. Wow.
Yep.
I mean, this, and I think I posted it in our chat. I said, and maybe I did repost it on Twitter or something like that. I said, this issue comes for almost every Catholic couple I know that's used in it.
Absolutely.
So this is the issue. This is the issue. I'm convinced of it.
This is the difference between a happy marriage and struggling.
Yeah.
As the poster mentioned.
Yeah. So what does Mr. Brugger? What does he say about it? So answer, I admire your faithfulness in following the church's teaching for the past 16 years. I also admire your solicitude in seeking advice on a very sensitive topic. So he's a little older than us. Mm-hmm. My wife and I, married now 30 years, practiced tight NFP. I don't know what that means.
On and off
for more than 2 decades.
Tight NFP.
I think
it's supposed to be a different type. I don't know.
That's different than the one that we use.
Better than loose NFP? Yeah. I don't know. See, I guess he's saying they were pretty stringent maybe, whereas you're more loosey-goosey and you have 9 kids.
I wonder how many kids he had. I'll have to look him up. The monthly cycle, you look up and see how many kids they have. I'd be real curious. The monthly cycles of abstinence, or pursuing children became part of the rhythm of our married life. It brought order and salutary discipline. Okay, to our sexual relationship and taught us both, especially me, the importance of self-mastery.
Okay, fair enough.
Attention to natural fertility cycles is not a panacea for happy marriage. No way. They don't say that in marriage prep.
Yep.
But in our relationship, it has been a precondition for preserving the beauty and order of our conjugal life. Okay.
Fair enough.
Yes, it's true that couples find the abstinence dimension of NFP burdensome. Yeah. Especially husbands.
No kidding.
Yeah, no kidding. This is all news to me. I'm hearing this for the first time. That was a terrible Donald Trump impression.
I didn't even.
Didn't even know I was imitating. Golly, is that bad? And wives, especially, can find it burdensome to need to say no during those periods. Yeah.
Yeah.
My wife and I too found the abstinence period at times very difficult.
They did practice tight NFP. They only have 5 kids.
Oh wow. Good.
So he's pretty tight.
I would definitely say. That's
if he had been a little looser, he might have more kids.
Yeah. I have I don't know how many kids we'd have if we had tight NFP. Probably 5, maybe 6. You're definitely,
and if you had looser NFP, maybe you'd be at least a dozen.
Yeah. That's right. I'd be divorced or something probably back then. Missing person.
Yeah.
I'd be on the side of a milk carton somewhere. Okay. We had to pray for strength and courage to make continent choices, like as opposed to like
incontinent.
Yeah, or countries, states, continent choices. I didn't know that was a thing. Especially when the emotions of sexual desire became intense. Emotions.
I know the painful stage of that.
I'd like to interview this guy.
Yeah.
Before I continue, permit me gently to correct a common misconception. You referred to the church's teaching on sexual matters as, quote, Catholic rules, unquote, as if the church brought them into existence and has the power to change them. This is not the case.
I suspect that they could,
what you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and what you loose on earth. This is okay.
If God gave Moses divorce, I'm pretty sure that this is not of the realm of possibility.
Let me finish this, and then let's chatter his little comments here. The moral norms protected in the marriage bed are not rules created by the church, but truths that we discover who's the we?
Yeah.
That we discover.
It's a little we.
Yeah. I don't know. Little wee.
Not like we the people. It's
yeah. What is the we? What is the we? No one asked me. No, yeah. I'm not part of that.
I wasn't a part of the discovery team.
No, yeah. I don't know who that we is. I'd like to know. But truths that we discovered by attending to the natural law, which is inscribed on our hearts and as God as its author. Again, our hearts. I don't think I'm in the hour.
See, that's really hard because I think like if I would do something terrible, like, kill somebody or commit adultery, I would feel that and I would know that. But for this set of rules, as far as just other acts goes, it's just not the same. For me personally, I don't think. The scrupulosity can kick in sometimes. But
you and a lot of people. It is important to understand that the church does not legislate morality.
Ooh.
I disagree with that. I think the church does, and it may very well have the power to do it. Whatever you bind on earth may be bound in heaven. And
that does sound like the legislation of morality, and it does sound like there are rules that we need to follow.
Yeah. Rather, the church guards it and faithfully hands it on so that men and women in every generation will be able to make choices that lead to authentic human freedom and fulfillment. The Catholic Church has no more power to change or abrogate the truths of the natural moral law than it does to command the sun not to rise in the morning. Yeah, I think you do. I think the church does.
Because, I mean, if the church didn't... Oh, if you want to finish up.
Let's finish his reasoning here.
Okay.
We'll post to the article below, but we want to come back and hone in on that issue. So you asked whether it can be morally illicit to stimulate one another to climax outside of the context of a complete marital act. I understand why you might think this is a legitimate way of showing affection, but what you're asking is whether mutual masturbation is sometimes legitimate. There's actually a link here. I guess I should.
No, I didn't see that. Oh, there's another question.
A question about marital intimacy and John Paul II's theology of the body. He wrote another article from November 9th. So I'll link to that. I have not had a chance to read that one. Yeah. So So he apparently has asked this question, answered this question, or tried to answer this question before. The church in its constant tradition has interpreted the 5th precept of the 10 Commandments, which is what? Don't commit adultery?
Yep. No, well,
see, we're good Catholics. We got to look it up.
I think that was the 6th commandment. The 5th is murder, I believe. Yeah, I'm.
5th precept of the 10. I've never heard it called the precept. The 5th precept of the 10 Commandments is prohibiting every expression of non-marital sexual.
We were both. The 5th commandment is honor your father and mother. So I'm not sure what this means.
This includes every choice to seek sexual climax. I know in some people some faiths order them differently. What's the
6th is thou shalt not kill.
So 5th has to be adultery.
5th was honor thy father and mother. 7th is do not commit adultery.
Is that the Catholic one?
Well, so there's different versions of the 10 Commandments, right? Deuteronomy and other.
Yeah.
So maybe I don't know which version he's using.
I have to think he's thinking adultery, but that seems like a stretch.
Some fact checking there.
Yeah. So he says, you might respond, well, you say that what's wrong is non-marital sexual behavior, but we are married. You are certainly correct that marriage is necessary for upright sex, but being married does not ensure that all sexual acts within marriage are consistent with the good of the marriage, that is, are properly marital. An act must be conducive to the purposes of marriage, which means purposes, not purpose. Sorry, John. Which means that it has to be the kind of act that brings the couple together as a true one flesh union. Permit me to explain.
The poor John, sweep the leg.
Yeah. Not just any sexual act enables a couple to become a one flesh union. Only the kind of act that, as the Code of Canon Law puts it, is apt in itself for the procreation of offspring. Oh, I got so many things I got to say here. This expression might sound overly technical, but it is important to understand what the church is trying to communicate here.
It's better to masturbate and go to confession.
So brave for the guy off camera. Throw poor Onan under the bus here. The church does not mean the act must actually be fertile, which...
So that then... he's contradicting himself.
Yeah, or even that a couple needs to be intending to conceive when they engage it.
So that also fits with the other acts.
After all, the church endorses NFP for couples who wish to avail themselves of the good of bodily intimacy during infertile periods. Well, depends who you ask. When they have discerned that they should not seek to conceive new life. The expression means that the act should be procreative in kind. I don't know what that means.
I don't know what that means either.
It must be the kind of
legalistic terms there.
Yeah. Must be the kind of act that couples would engage in if they were seeking to conceive a child.
Oh, so now we're going down the rabbit hole. Like it's a cyclical argument.
This is all fraying at the seams here. I don't know. Yep. I'm just not tracking this. For no other kind of act can actualize their bodily complementarity. So
I don't know about that.
This is the issue.
If you take a 6 and a 9, you're balanced.
That's right.
Very complimentary.
Yeah. I could definitely say I've heard that.
I'm sorry. Like, look at the bottom. Do not take theological advice from us. I'm just saying from a symmetrical standpoint.
Yeah. Yes. There is some complementarity there.
The yin and the yang.
Yeah. See, this part is... I get if you're going to engage in the conjugal act, it needs to be done a certain way. I'm okay with the notion of that.
Yep, that is the gold standard.
Right. I think it's an enormous leap to say, well, anytime a couple engages sexually, it has to be the conjugal act. But that's what he's saying here. Not everything a couple does is conceiving children or trying to, like, and obviously in non-sexual context, like that's not the only thing couples do, right? Do you have if a couple hugs and kisses every time in preparation for the conjugal act, must they not do that independent of that?
Yeah. Once you start the long launch sequence, you got to follow through.
This whole thing here, I don't think makes sense.
Yep.
I think they just say it, this, and it just is self-evidently true. I don't think it's self-evidently true.
And it's part of it is that when people start out a relationship, they don't start with sex. you start by making out. You start with other acts,
Yeah.
more than likely.
Yeah.
Some form of it.
Yeah.
You don't just jump right into it, even on your wedding night.
Right. I think this I would call it a leap. I would call it a philosophical leap. To me, is the most unsupported. And I'm not saying this is wrong. I'm not saying he's wrong.
Yep.
I'm not saying the church doesn't teach this. But I think there's a giant leap to say that every sexual type activity a couple does has to end up in a procreative style act.
Mm-hmm.
It's not written on my heart. I don't think that's self-obvious. If that's the teaching, it comes through another source. It's not natural law. This is not natural law.
Yeah.
If it's just divine inspiration, fine. Let's just be transparent and honest about it.
Because it's not always natural within other animal populations.
No.
It doesn't feel natural to abstain.
Yeah. I just think I don't think we're required to accept that and say, yeah, that makes sense, because it definitely does not make sense to me.
As far as the lived experience.
Yeah. So
philosophically,
yeah,
sure. But when you would add the human element, it just doesn't add up.
And to say, and if you disregard this, it's a more potentially mortal sin that could send you to hell for eternity. Mm-hmm. Again, that's always the huge X factor here. If we're talking about what's the ideal, what's the best thing, fine.
Yep.
But if we're saying, if you step outside the lines a little bit, now it's a grave matter. You're committing a mortal sin. You could go to hell for eternity. That just is such a huge leap that I just don't think is as obvious as they seem to suggest it is. And of course, there's no citations or quotation, here. So he says, you say this moral requirement is not explicitly addressed in the Catechism of the Catholic Church, but the Catechism does in fact address it, defining masturbation as, quote, the deliberate stimulation of the genital organs in order to derive sexual pleasure. Precisely, it would seem, the kind of action that you and your husband are contemplating. The Catechism teaches, so this is 2352 of the Catechism. The Catechism teaches quite plainly, both the magisterium and the church, in the course of constant tradition and the moral sense of the faithful, have been in no doubt and have firmly maintained that masturbation is an intrinsically and gravely disordered action.
So if I went to the confessional and I said, I masturbated with my wife the other night, what do you think he thinks?
Probably mutual acts together.
You think, but I would interpret that as me being by myself, kind of with my wife.
Oh, yeah, but I mean, yeah, each doing it yourself, but maybe in the same room together.
I don't think that definition fits.
Well, it's certain. I mean, but that definition, we've talked about this before. The definition, the deliberate stimulation of the sexual organs in order to derive sexual pleasure, that encompasses the conjugal act itself, even the complete, perfect conjugal act.
And it's very deliberate.
Yeah.
Generally.
Very deliberate. Yeah. Probably the most deliberate act we have. So
there we go.
Okay. Anyway, so it's always interesting when they come to 2352 as being the clear catechism teaching, which I think could be read that way if you read it a certain way, but I think you got to be doing some finessing of the language to use this to not include the conjugal act, but also include mutual acts that most people don't think of when they think of the term masturbation, right?
Yep.
I mean, so it's not clear. Like, if that is the support, I don't think it's as clear as he seems to say it is. I think more is needed. Maybe another section of the Catechism will clear this up. When Catholic teaching so I'm continuing with the article here. When the Catholic teaching calls an act intrinsically and gravely disordered, this means that if the act is chosen with sufficient knowledge and deliberate consent, the choice is mortally sinful, and one would need to confess the act before receiving Holy Communion. I'm not going to go on to. So he cites another part of 2352. But he says this. So he says this means masturbation is contrary to the kind of self-giving that marital love requires. Far from facilitating the unitive love of the spouses, the act is contrary to it. I would say abstinence is contrary to that too. If the marital
more
purpose,
so even.
More so. If
you're literally rejecting your spouse,
you're not even getting unity.
rejecting.
Yeah. So if the purpose of marriage is to engage in the conjugal act, I would think that abstaining meets that definition of
it's far more painful.
far yeah,
Like the rejection that goes into that is painful in itself. But then you also have your own self pain from living through this.
Yeah. And of course, then they end up in a whole different set of philosophical concepts of act versus non-act and all that. But again, if you apply the standard, abstinence is more of a rejection of the purpose of marriage and the sexual faculties than any of these imperfect acts. I don't know how else I reach a different conclusion.
Exactly.
About that.
I mean, abstinence creates a very lonely environment.
Yeah. So I don't know how do they deal with that. I mean, so anyway, of course, he goes on to say you shouldn't do it. Yada yada yada. First of all, you should resolve to be faithful to the Lord no matter what the cost. So I think he's saying don't give in. This will require you to communicate with charity and gentleness your concerns about your husband's illicit proposals and ultimately to communicate your unwillingness to participate in those proposals.
So it sounds like they could be on the road to divorce.
Yeah, well, small price to pay.
Like, is that worth it?
Yeah. Remind him especially, so this is interesting, when you communicate your concerns, speak to your husband, again, lovingly and gently, of the spiritual and moral harm to your marriage and family that masturbation will cause.
Oh, that's going to go nowhere.
I don't know.
Because he's in a situation where he's like, well, I'm doing this by myself.
And she already said he's using porn.
Yep.
What is worse? Like, how is that?
There is no way that being with his wife is worse than porn.
Yeah. And I know they'll say you shouldn't be doing that either, and I'll say that too, in case it wasn't obvious. Yeah, but that's what's happening. I mean, that is what will happen to most men under these circumstances.
And it's because masturbation is the same as masturbation with porn. It's the same as adultery.
Yeah,
according to mortal sin. So he could either just go out and have an affair,
right,
or just watch porn,
right.
And obviously, my moral compass tells me that adultery is more wrong than masturbation, but that's not how it's set up.
Right. Yeah, I think, and that's a whole nother problem, but it is a problem that when you designate these acts as intrinsically evil, can never be done, you can't even make basic nuanced distinctions between them. And in fact, if you apply Aquinas, it'd say that the solo acts are worse, which just defies any.
And those were just his thoughts.
But so he talks about the harm that this will cause to your marriage. Remind him especially of the harm to children, that disunity over such a foundational issue.
Oh, the harm to children comes from a cold household. Yeah. Like, I mean, my wife and I lived for years, and we talk about this as far as just how cold our marriage was for a long time. There's other factors, and people can say, well, you should have worked on those, but it's much easier to be loving for both people for whatever reason. I don't understand it. When you can't be together in this fashion.
He says, when parents are at odds with each other in matters such as this, children frequently develop a mistrust and antipathy for the church. I mean, are you going to talk about this with your kids? Hey, kids, we're really fighting over whether to engage in this. What do you think? But whatever. But he goes on, and unless they have their own Christian conversions, they frequently go on to imitate or even exceed their parents' sins. This is nonsense. Well, it's
dramatic. My parents used birth control, and we have never done that in marriage. I mean,
we have talked to many people on and off the record who have used these types of quote unquote illicit acts in their marriage, and I don't think I have yet to meet one that didn't say it made their marriage better as opposed to the alternative. Now, that's not an issue. That's not saying that the teaching is wrong, but when he uses this as an argument for why they shouldn't do this, he's wrong, because the harm to the household is I would say absolutely worse for most people with extended bitter abstinence than engaging in these acts, whether they're right or wrong or not. But if we're going to talk about marital discord, family discord, and all that, he's wrong. Like, he's not listening. You need to listen to people.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And one thing that's interesting about NFP is that they say it's attractive because it's a birth control that can help you get pregnant. But the thing is that I think other acts are the same thing. They can help you get pregnant too. So in our case, when we first got married, we did do other acts at the beginning. But I told her once we got married, I said, we should probably, this isn't, the way that the church says we should do it or whatever. So my wife can lock all that down. Like, she'd be very scrupulous. And so we went through a long time where nothing happened. And we really struggled. I mean, it was, for her and me, like it's just like in that one book, I can't remember who wrote it, but you said that the person said that the intimacy in the marriage is like the oil in an engine. It keeps running smoothly. If you don't have oil, it overheats. And that's what we went through for a long time. And we talk about that, just how much of a struggle it was, and just the issues we had and how we would never want to go back to that. However, like, if you have a scrupulous wife who wouldn't want to do anything, you could never have kids again. But when you do other acts, sometimes things get out of hand. Just yesterday, my wife was like, you should go to town and buy some pregnancy tests.
Oh, wow.
Not on time. They were both negative.
Oh.
But if I know for a fact, like, if we lived scrupulous lives, my wife could do that. We would have a very difficult marriage, and we would never have any issues having kids again. It would just be all locked down.
Yeah.
So once you stay, it's kind of like once you play with fire, sometimes things get out of hand.
Yeah. Who's more likely to get pregnant? The couple that is doing this and then things get out of control, or the one that's living in different cells? I don't know.
Yeah, so you'll never hear me complain about NFP the same way that Craig does.
Yeah.
That's why I don't discuss it, because we just have a different way of doing things. And I don't know. It's painful to live in an abstinent marriage for extended periods.
Yeah. Maybe that's what the church requires, and fine. But what I really resist is this idea that doing the strict abstinence is going to be better for your marriage.
There's
and
no
your health
way.
And kids. Like that.
There's no way.
That's just not true. Like, I'm sorry, that is not true.
The guy going to confession every week in a hidden manner, and there's no communication with his wife about what's happening.
I wish they would just say, yeah, this is hard, and yes, you have to crucify your flesh, and it may make your marriage worse, whatever, but this is what the church says you do it. Like,
you don't think it makes it better.
Yeah, I could accept that. Like, at least be transparent. But this is just disingenuous and not true. Like, this, as you can tell, I'm kind of agitated about it. Day one and everything. I'm still just really riled up.
Aggression there, yeah.
Woo! So anyway, so he goes on to say, yes, don't do it and all this and that. But we need to be right about this. And when I say we, I mean we, the church, need to be right about this. If you're only getting this based on 2352, I think there needs to be more. I need better basis for this.
Because it feels like 2352 is focused on single people, mostly men.
Yeah, I think 2352 is at best ambiguous about this. And this does come for almost every Catholic couple.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think, I don't know. This is the core issue, I think. And I hope that this video gets shared, our channel gets shared, and that we get enough attention that we can have a better conversation about it. And this is a really good segue to something that that I hear about. People say, well, why you two? You guys are not qualified to talk about this. Get priests, get experts on here. You know what? They don't come on the show.
And they don't have the experience we do.
They don't.
We have, how many kids? 13 kids between two of us?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But even if I'll listen to anyone, but you know what? They will not come on this show. Just give you an example. I had a very close priest friend of mine who really helped me years ago with these kinds of things. And I reached out to him and I says, here's what we're doing. Here's the things we're really struggling with. We'd like to have a priest input on some of this. And he took a week or so and he got back. He's like, I respect what you guys are doing. I think this is really important, but I don't think I'm supposed to be part of it. So that's fair. I totally respect that. But this idea that we can just call up a theologian or a priest or whatever, and get them to come on and do something other than what this guy
like
did.
a real interview where we
Yeah.
talk about the reality of this, because
It does not
the fact
happen.
like the guy's just gonna all of a sudden become, you know, self-mastered against his almost like a biological sort of component to life. It's not that easy.
Yeah. I want to highlight one thing and bring it up. I'm going to put it on here. So he says, this is something he said earlier. The moral norms protecting the marriage bed are not rules created by the church, but truths that we discover by attending to the natural law, which is inscribed on our hearts. That, I don't know what we're supposed to do with that, but that, and that we can't change it. Well, we don't make the rules.
But what if we don't always see that?
Yeah. I think, to me, it seemed, as a layperson, as a non-theologian, whatever, that seems like kind of a cop-out and kind of a way to say, our hands are tied. Sorry, we don't make the rules. We just apply them.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's true. But if the rules get messed up somewhere on stuff that's non-infallible, who the heck's going to fix it? Nobody.
Yeah.
Nobody.
And they can't tell you that people have been practicing NFP since the beginning of time.
Right.
Like, I mean,
right.
It hasn't worked like that. Like, we haven't had the ability to.
Yeah.
Or the understanding of like reproductive function.
Yeah. I got to share this comment, this one message. So the person that sent this to me, we were messaging back and forth, and he sent it to me because he knew I would probably disagree with this person, but thought maybe this would be persuasive. And so I'm not going to tell you who it was, but I'm just going to put a part of his comment to me. He said, there was a missing link somewhere. People weren't suffering before. Why are they suffering now? I don't have that answer. So this was my response. I said, wait, what makes you think our grandparents weren't suffering with this stuff? Like,
true.
There is no doubt that from the time on and on, people have been struggling with this
Especially, it's one thing when you're young to have children, but once you have a bunch of kids and you're in your late 30s, early 40s, I mean, there's a lot to consider there.
I still distinctly remember when I was in college. I think I was still in the seminary, but I was writing a paper on Humani Vitae, and one of my advisors, who was probably about my age and state in life, probably on that, it was a female though, on that sort of menopause doorstep or whatever, and says, can you do something for us, because the answers the church gives us are not very good. Like, I just remember, and I did not know what she was talking about.
Wow, this has been your mission.
This has been I am convinced this is why that's why I'm here, because I just remember seeing the pain in her voice. And this is not someone that would open up about this stuff, I wouldn't think. And I didn't know what she meant, but now I know what she meant. In these kinds of articles, just are not helpful.
And this is saying that this is worth divorce, perhaps. Like, this is, if it pushes you to divorce, you're doing the right thing, at least, because you're being, continent, as he would say. Yeah.
And I'm sure they're saying, well, we're being dramatic, and yes, no, you shouldn't get divorced over it, but that's not because the teaching is wrong, because you got these other things. Yeah.
But if you live in a house that lacks love, and it's just filled with coldness, that's a difficult place to be. It's a difficult place to raise kids.
Your chances of getting divorced, I would say, are higher if you're trying to live that life than if you engage in these types of things in the meantime. Doesn't make them right.
Nope, doesn't make them right.
We're just talking about that.
Theological advice from us.
But we're just stating the facts, folks.
And maybe we're all just supposed to suffer through this.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's not like these things make marriage so easy that it feels like it's cheating either.
No.
I mean, I think that's a misconception, is that it's going to make marriage so easy. You won't have as many kids. I don't know. I feel like the abstinent marriage has a greater chance of having less kids, as far as if you can really lock it down.
I think for most people, it makes marriage more tolerable. And you
have that renewed connection. Like that, the connection thing is really important to me, as far as having a connection with my wife that's constant.
And if the husband or wife, but let's say the husband that is laboring under the long-standing struggle with solo and maybe porn, the husband that can be freed of that subvert, maybe not entirely, but to a much lesser degree, and maybe gets rid of the porn because of it. I mean, I can't imagine how uplifting that is for him and for the marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know we're not supposed to do ends justify the means thing, whatever, but just looking at the reality of the situation, what these guys are saying, if followed, is for a lot of people, a lot of men especially, are going to fall into that in hidden, in secret, struggling with that, carrying that moral guilt. Like it is the reality. Most people cannot follow this standard perfectly or anything close to perfect. I'm convinced of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the people that can, I think, are postmenopausal.
Yeah,
and they, kind of look back.
Maybe they've forgotten
so
what
bad.
it was. Yeah.
I don't know.
So I don't know. This is the issue, I think, of our times. And
I do think that these acts could save some marriages. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know, and maybe I'm wrong.
And again, even if these acts are less than perfect relative to the conjugal act,
and we're not debating that,
right? But again, compared to what's the alternative? It's acts like the comparison is this versus the conjugal act, but that's not what these people are doing.
Mm-hmm.
These people are going to engage in soul-crushing abstinence, and probably one or more, both of them, is going to be engaging in solo and porn and all that. Like, that is the alternative that you're comparing these two.
And there's a reason that a very high percentage of the people that subscribe to OnlyFans are married men.
Yeah.
This is it.
Yeah. And again, this is not a cure-all for those people either, because we know that, by and large, this is a Catholic phenomenon. I don't think most non-Catholics feel burdened by this, and they're still doing it. But for Catholic marriages, what this couple is struggling with is way more common than I think people would like to admit.
But you have to have intimacy in the marriage to make it thrive. And that's what people are seeking through OnlyFans, is the intimacy with the person. They're not getting that at home, and so they seek it out. Yeah. I would say it's very rare for a guy that has an enthusiastic wife about being intimate with him that he's going to go out and join OnlyFans. I would say that's extremely rare.
Right. So anyway, yeah, this is the thing, and this is why we're here. This is why we will continue to be here, and this needs to get more attention.
Because marriages suffer because of this, and he even talks about it. The author of the article even talks about how much suffering went on in his marriage, and he's probably happy about it, or he can look at it as a sense of pride, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, 30. I'd like to interview him and get him, and I'd like to find out exactly what his life was like during the midst of it,
and what his height NFP is like.
Yeah, I mean,
like, is he just going to confession then too?
Yeah,
like, I mean,
yeah, maybe.
I'm gonna guess.
Okay, is that what we're saying? Yeah, guess what? This is going to be nearly impossible to follow, and you're just going to be a frequent participant in confession, which, again,
that's fine.
We love confession. Go ahead, but
go to confession.
But I don't know.
You're going to be going solo through your marriage.
Yeah,
in a lot of ways.
Let's just be honest about it. Let's just be honest and transparent about it, and stop hiding behind this nonsense that this is.
And so now this poor guy, where his wife wrote into the article, she is going to put the lockdown on, probably.
Yeah. And I feel and it sounds like she would be willing to do that if she felt morally like it was okay to do it.
And her health is on the line, so I understand that as well.
I think this issue needs to be looked at more closely, and without just, well, these are the rules, we don't make them, live with it. I mean, okay, fine, but I don't think that's. I think there's something unsatisfying about that.
Yeah, but I feel like we need bumper stickers or those ribbon stickers that people put on their vehicles for the mutual masturbators. Maybe, I
don't know. Which arm do you wear it on?
I don't know. We'll come up with something with the design.
Okay.
We'll get our guys on that. Maybe somebody come up with something creative.
Twitter poll.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll link to that article below. If I can dig this guy up on Twitter. Twitter. Maybe I'll even tag him. I don't know.
You hesitant, huh? Why not? Gonna like punch the bully in the nose kind of thing? Like,
yeah, I'm kind of a wimp when it comes to like just putting it right out there for people. I'm more of a passive aggressive thing, but we'll see. Maybe
I don't know. You're a Twitter gladiator though.
Yeah.
I mean,
all right. Someone find me this guy's Twitter, and we'll post it on there, and maybe we'll do an episode together. Be interesting.
It would be great. I mean, and we'd have to make him swear under oath to be honest.
Yeah. And I will say this, finally, we're really going to wrap this thing up, but, you know, if he's been married 30 some years, let's say there's a good chance they're postmenopausal. I will say, even like our marriage and this part of our got tremendously better in the last year, almost exactly to the year. Right?
Yeah.
And it's still not without difficulty, as I whine and complain about, but it is so much better, to the point where I sometimes forget how deeply painful it was just 2 years ago.
Oh yeah.
Like, you can very quickly forget, but I haven't forgotten. I know what these people, I know what this couple is going through here. And I feel very badly for them, but maybe, if this guy hasn't had to deal with this stuff in 10 years, he may have forgotten how miserable it really was. But there's plenty of couples out there, myself included, who are in this boat right now.
And I do feel bad that our kids for a while had to live through our marriage when it was just kind of cold. It's difficult.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I disagree with that part of this article. Totally.
Yeah, let us know what you think. Go in the comments. Someone other than John. I mean, John, come down and give your comments. But I'm curious. I think I know what the comments are going to say, but go ahead and leave your comments below and let us know what you think. So,
yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you, Jonah. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And until next time, everyone.
Bye.
Have a good one.